myself up there in the corner. Yeah. Okay, so the first chart that hopefully you can see now is the chart of R.F. Kennedy Jr. And, you know, the reason why I chose his chart is because he's quite a controversial figure in American politics. And the reason he's so controversial is because he was initially running for the Democrats. And then when he failed to secure whatever votes he needed, he threw his hat in the ring with the Republicans, which of course is jumping ship from his family's tradition, because his father was a Democrat and his uncle was a Democrat. And so he's seen from many of the people as a traitor because he's jumped ship. And so I just thought his chart would be interesting on many levels. And I've picked his chart because I'm particularly interested in the health implications of not just America, but the planet, really, post COVID, post the supposed pandemic, as I like to call it. So let's have a look at RFK's chart. And I'll just find the little do the lackey so I can point to things. Okay, so if you don't know a great deal about astrology, well, I'll try and convert it into English as I go along. So the first thing that I notice in his chart is the Capricorn stellium. You see all these planets here? That's Chiron, the Achilles heel, and Venus, and his destiny point, and the Sun, and Mercury. That's a whole swag of planets in the sign of Capricorn, which is associated on an esoteric level with higher wisdom. And it's associated on a more mundane or a practical level with things like governments. And in his chart, it's all fallen in this third house, which is very hands-on. So this is a hands-on, can-do kind of a man who has a dharma, that's the dharma there, to do with a higher, broader vision of matters to do with governments. And of course, not only is Capricorn associated with governments, but it's also associated with families. And he has a tragic family history in the American political scene. Yeah, anyway, so that's the first thing that my eye is drawn to in his chart. Now, because he's got all this Capricorn, one must immediately look and find the planet Saturn. And there it is. That's the planet Saturn there. And it's sitting almost right on the ascendant. You see that arrow? That's a sort of a pathway that we're meant to proceed on our spiritual growth or our ascension. So when Saturn sits on the ascendant, it says he has a dharma, a destiny that's overdue, that's weighted with government matters and family matters to do with a bigger, broader vision of families, of the family of Americans, of government. Yeah? It's not particularly easy to have Saturn sitting so close to the ascendant. My internet connection's telling me it's a little unstable. So if I freeze, hopefully it'll right itself. Yeah, so that's what I notice, is that he has a very strong Saturn, which means that he kind of has to play by the rules, and yet his thinking is wider and broader and deeper. The other thing I would point out to you is the group of planets in the sign of Cancer here. We've got the Earth, that's a destiny dharma point.
Yes.
Is because the solar eclipse is more important than the lunar eclipse. The lunar eclipse is a precursor. So what I wanted to tell you about there's the eclipse there, there's the sun and the moon sitting in 9 degrees Aries. But what is very interesting is the planet Chiron in the eclipse chart. Notice that it's sitting at 22 Aries. And I'm sure there's the Mars in 22 Cancer, and there's RFK's Uranus in 20.5 Cancer. Yeah. So, and in his Capricorn stellium, there's his natal Chiron in 22 Capricorn. Yeah. So we have a crisis going on, not only in his chart, but also in the American government, because he's attempting to turn things upside down and inside out. Now, the Aries stellium that's in the solar eclipse chart that's building between now and the end of the month is doing house cleaning in the sixth house. You see the sixth house here? So he's doing what he's meant to be doing, which is putting a new broom through the day-to-day functions of government and creating everything to fall apart that is meant to fall apart so that it can be renewed and cleansed again. So he's having a Chiron square Chiron, and Chiron square his T square. So for him, it must be enormously gratifying to be able to have his hands on the wheel and do things that are part of his Dharma and his destiny. One of the points I wanted to make about it, and I heard Catherine Austin Fitz, who I have a lot of time for, and she was talking about what's going on in the Republican Party, and she made a comment to the effect that she thought some of the people from, let's say, at the right side of the Republican Party were leaning on RFK because he's a bit of a radical in the party and he's come in from the left, attempting to suppress him. Now, she only alluded to it. She didn't give any specific details, but I don't have any doubt that he's having a great cleansing happening with his work and his Dharma, and hopefully the pressure's not too great for him. Catherine Austin Fitz made the point that she'd elected to work outside of the system because she's previously been in the system and, you know, they come after you. So I don't know how cohesive the Republican Party is and whether RFK is copping flack. I mean, he's certainly copping flack from the Democrats and copping flack from all over. But, you know, it's very, very strong Chiron transits. Anyone else got anything they wanted to comment about? And as I said, we're building towards this solar eclipse at the end of the month.
I just looked up the Sabian symbol.
Yes.
For 9 degrees of Aries, and it's quite interesting. It's a man teaching new forms for old symbols.
Absolutely, that's right. And that symbol that Zachary's pointed out, the man teaching new forms from old symbols, it really says draw upon the ancient wisdom and make something new again and share it. Now, RFK's Capricorn stellium, all these planets here, are in the educational house. Yeah. So he's meant to be actively speaking to raise the awareness through practical hands-on matters. And because it's a lot of cardinal energy, all this Aries and the Capricorn and the Cancer, and there's nothing quiet or meek or mild about it. The question is, I'm waiting to see whether he eventually can get to the point of what really happened with the assassination of his father and his uncle, because I think he has unfinished business. That's this Cancer here. He has unfinished business associated with family, and he's meant to be the revolutionary to be able to heal things from the past. So I think it's both extremely personal and very national, the Chiron work that he's doing. Okay, the internet's remaining with us, so that's good. That's good. What I might do now is rub out all this squiggly stuff, and then I'm going to bring up Benjamin Netanyahu's chart.
Okay, but there's one problem with Benjamin Netanyahu.
Is there? What's the problem?
He's not the real deal. It's a body double.
Okay.
The real Netanyahu. I mean, you can look at the chart. No harm in looking at the chart, because at one point it was the real Netanyahu. At some point in time, we're not sure. I think it may have been 4 or 5 years ago. He was replaced by a body double.
Right.
Because he according to Zetatalk, he was there was so much opposition that he basically went underground. He actually entered a tunnel, and they and we don't know whether he's still alive or has died. We just don't know that. That Netanyahu that's parading around is a body double. But by all means put up the chart of Netanyahu, because at one point that was okay. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? That's very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So So there's what was the original Netanyahu chart. And as Zachary says, we don't actually know what's gone on because, of course, what we're told is just a fraction of what is the truth. But if looking at Netanyahu's chart, the original one, we see that he's got this great swag of planets in Libra. Now, he's got Mercury, Neptune, the past life point, the moon, the sun, and Vulcan. Now, the best of Libra, if the soul's working through it, is that it works for justice and the individual will work for justice. If, however, the personality's got a hold of a Libra stellium, then at best people mark time or stall or prevaricate or find a comfortable position and stay there and don't move forward. It's the halfway sign, halfway between Aries and Pisces is Libra. Yeah, so that's the first thing to notice about Netanyahu's chart. Now, the other thing that I'd like to talk about with his chart is the planet Uranus, because as I said, if he's operating from an esoteric or a soul perspective, then you would expect his Uranus to be very dynamic in the chart, because Uranus has a very strong connection on the soul level to Libra. But what we see with the Uranus is that it is unaspected, simply meaning there are no lines.
It's forming a square to Mercury. It's forming a square.
Oh, yes, there is. I beg your pardon. Zachary's right. My computer's failed to draw it. There should be a red line there, but there are not a great deal of aspects. Yeah, there is that square to Mercury, but it's a very, very weak Uranus. So what we would say is that the soul has a fairly weak grip on the incarnation, and therefore there would be certain key times, and I'm saying it would be around about age 42, simply because his Uranus sits on the 8th house cusp, and probably so I would say from the midlife, from maybe 40 to 42, we would have seen whether his soul was able to come in and bring about transformation. Now, he's born in 49, so how old does that make him? Somewhere in his 70s, hey?
He'd be a year younger than I am, so he would be approaching 76 in October this year.
Yeah, so therefore, what was he doing when he was 42? That's 3 decades ago.
Wikipedia,
Yeah. So it's a few decades ago, and we don't know whether or not his soul's active in his life. The other thing that is very interesting is that he has a very prominent Chiron. Yeah. So he was born at a time, 3 years after the birth of Israel, which was 46 or 48.
Israel is May 11th, 1948.
48. Okay, so he's born one year after. Year
and a half, basically.
Year and a half.
Year and 5 months.
Yep, a year and 5 months after the birth of Israel. So somehow or other, the nation of Israel is extremely personal to him. And when Israel is harmed, he feels that he's harmed. Yeah. So, and Chiron on the ascendant can be tremendously healing or very, very separative or fracturing. Yeah. Now, if we look at the destiny point, which is Aries here, we see from birth that he didn't have any planets in Aries, but what he had was the Earth there. So he has to learn about leadership, and dare I say it, from a new and different way. Because if you look at his Mars in Leo, there it is. Mars in Leo's got a lot of leadership experience, but I wonder whether he has leadership experience when the soul's leading. You see, because here's the soul ruler, not really getting much of a look in, you know? So you look at his chart, and with anybody's chart, you have to judge it by the actions and the choices they make. So the choices and the actions that he made 30, 35 years ago are kind of pivotal in terms of whether his soul energies come in and he's able to take Israel forward, or whether he considers that he's got a bit of an international fight to the death, because all of these planets are up here in the international house. Other things that are interesting about Netanyahu's chart is the ascendant at 10 degrees Aries. And the reason that is so interesting is that the fixed star Antares, and I'm just trying to remember what degree that falls at. I should know, and I can't remember now. I think it might be 15 Aries. So he has the fixed star Antares sitting on his ascendant. And the fixed star Antares is associated very much with the Middle East and the choice of war or peace. You know, so the question all over Netanyahu's chart is his soul active and can he work for peace? Or is he a man of war who feels like he's in a fight to the death? And, you know, I must say that I don't see much of the soul energy. I'm inclined to think that he's sort of dug a hole and his shadow's running the show. And he's,
Yeah,
of
I would
course,
agree.
used a lot of international money to you know, do all the dreadful things, gradually take all the land from the Palestinians. Things you'd like to comment, Zach, on that?
Yeah, well, I think we have to look at this chart esoterically. And yeah, we got the Libra stellium, but esoterically speaking, that would mean that he's responding to Aries in a big way. That's where his North Node is, of course. So he has to respond to Aries. He's going to respond to Aries in some way. The question is whether it's higher Aries or lower Aries. And it just reminds me of some of the horoscopes of Nazi generals that I've looked up that they were born under Libra.
Yes.
And when I saw those charts, I said, oh, that's strange. This guy was a prominent Nazi general and he's born under Libra. So, but then I realized, oh, right. They are responding to, because they're advanced individuals, even though they served in a, you know, in a negative cause, they're responding to the Aries, the
Yep.
opposite sign of you know, from their sun sign. And I think that's the key here with Netanyahu. He's responding to Aries because that's his North Node, and because, you know, he obviously has a certain level of soul development in order to lead a nation. Have been elected, I don't know, 2 or 3 times or 4 times, whatever. One or two of those elections, however, was stolen. We strongly believe, and so I think that the key is the placement of Mars and Leo.
Yes.
And it's interesting, the Sabian symbol. I'll go ahead and read it. The Sabian symbol for that degree of Leo is daybreak, the luminescence of dawn in the eastern sky. The symbol implies a gradual feeling that darkness is dispersing, that a new day is on the horizon. You may feel there is a chance for new beginnings. Things
Mm.
along the way have been sacrificed, and there may be a certain emptiness, but you will see the light of day and move forward again.
Mm.
So I think that's what was the possibility which he had. But to me, I mean, I have to say quite bluntly and quite frankly, he's working for the dark forces. He's one of the major tools of the dark forces on the planet at this point in time, in
Mm.
my opinion. That's just my opinion. Make up your own mind, but by all means. So I think he was offered, you know, a real chance to move forward in this life, given what we see in the horoscope. But he's chosen to use all his talents, which are considerable, because I mean he has Venus on the ascendant. I mean, so you know,
Mm.
someone with Venus on the ascendant would be a very charming individual. You know, Bill Clinton had the same thing in his chart horoscope, although in his chart, I think it was in Libra, because Clinton has Libra rising. So yeah, I mean, you know, Netanyahu had all these opportunities to move forward, but he chose the dark side. He chose to work for the dark forces, and that's a real tragedy. Not only for him personally, that of course is correct, but for the entire nation of Israel. And I'll go further and say the Jewish persons around the world who are supporting this appalling destruction we just witnessed for the last 15 months, the Israel-Hamas war. I mean, they too, in my opinion, have allied themselves with the dark forces. I hate to say it. I hate to put it like that because some people might say, well, that's anti-Semitic, blah, blah, blah. But from the esoteric perspective, the thing is, from the esoteric perspective, for the last 10, 25 years, even further back, we've seen a separation of humanity into 2 major groups. Those who want to move forward into greater love and light, however they conceive that love and light. Many look for love and light in religious or spiritual beliefs, and that's a good place to start. and the other group, those people who want to move backward into darkness and hatred. And that's what we're seeing right around humanity. And for me, the nation of Israel is a good example of that. And the good thing about Israel and Israelis the last 15 months, we've seen demonstrations on a weekly basis on the weekend, places like Tel Aviv, that attract 10, 20,000 people who are demonstrating against Netanyahu and against the government.
Yeah.
And that is very, very encouraging to me. Extremely encouraging, because it shows that these people understand what's going on. They don't want to, they're not trying to, they just don't want to be dragged along for this bloody ride, which has unfolded the last 15 months.
That's right. And I mean, you see, he's born with, you see the moon just behind the sun. He's born under the balsamic phase of the moon.
Yeah.
And the balsamic phase of the moon simply means that there are matters from the past that need to be reconciled. Now, if you would look at the old karma, notice the 14.5 degrees Scorpio on the 12th house cusp. This is a degree associated with hatred, and the rulers of Scorpio are the Mars and Pluto. Now, they're not very close together, but he clearly has integrated leadership in previous past lives, but he's got karma to do with how he deals with hatred. Yeah. So,
yeah, well, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, Zachary said it. He had the great opportunities, and dare I say it, somewhere around 40 or 42, he has failed to respond in full measure to the soul, and therefore he's taking Israel and the Palestinians and potentially the world down the plug hole with him.
I just posted a brief bio of Netanyahu in the chat in his early life.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll have a look at that.
It's interesting. I would have expected him to have a lot more fixed planets, but I think actually what you just said about the 14 degrees Scorpio, the hatred, because it's such a fixed thing, I think that kind of, that's where it comes from.
And the thing is that he has Mars in Leo. Now, if the soul was using that, it would be second ray, love and wisdom. But and if the personality is using it, then it's the first ray, will and power. And so we have will and power, which is the easy path. There's an easy opposition. So it's very easy for him to fall into the use of might and power, which generates and creates an enormous amount of karma because he's engendered separation and hatred. And of course it was there beforehand, but it's just bigger and deeper.
I just looked up the Sabian symbol for his moon, and you won't believe this.
Oh, yes. What is it, Zachary?
The Sabian symbol for his moon at 19 degrees Libra. Let me quote.
I'll point to it. Yeah.
A Jewish rabbi in a tiny room full of manuscripts and books performing his duty.
Wow. Sorry, I've pointed to the sun. There's the moon there. A Jewish rabbi, read it again. A
Jewish rabbi in a tiny room full of manuscripts and books performing his duty.
Yeah.
And so I'll just read a few of the further comments. The symbol implies a person having the role of administering the spiritual and ethical laws and rituals and rules for living in their society. No matter how large or small the role is, this symbol implies being in touch with one's roots and studying and learning how to translate the lessons and the benefits for others. Wow. There is age-old wisdom and established tradition which has survived to this day, and you may need to access this knowledge through instruction or an inner search in order to deal with the situation. There are duties and ceremonies that need to be performed either for yourself or your community. Do what's needed with faith and reverence. So, I mean, that's
the fundamental of Zionism. And of course, that explains the Sagittarius too, because Sagittarius has got a great deal to do with religious wars, and especially with Antares sitting on the ascendant. So it's very loaded on a religious level, which I guess fits with the Piscean age or maybe even the age of Aries, but doesn't fit very well with the Aquarian age.
I just looked up the Sabian symbol for his sun sign.
Yep.
This, once again, fairly mind-boggling. A man alone in deep gloom, unnoticed, angels are coming to his aid.
Wow.
So yeah. So
yep. I might look.
He had the opportunity to really move the nation forward and to, forge a lasting, some sort of agreement with the Palestinians, which would have honored their claims to some degree, whatever. But what he chose was basically to crush their claims and their aspirations in favor of a strict, the strict Zionist sort of regime, which is, Greater Israel, and we reign supreme, and whatever we decide is that's the way it's going to be, and the Palestinians will just have to like it or lump it. That's it's very sad, actually.
It's extremely sad. I might put up now, I think that's the eclipse. Let me see if you can see that. You should be
Yeah, I
able
can
to.
see it. Yeah,
Very good.
yeah.
Okay, so this is the eclipse, which is, you'll see the latitude and longitude. It's off the coast of Colombia, just above the equator in the Pacific. So we may see some of it on the east coast of Australia. So now that's Pacific Standard Time, and it's either late tonight or early in the morning. So I imagine it'll probably be early in the morning Australian time. But if the first thing to notice, and let me just point out the eclipse, there it is, 24 degrees Virgo and 24 degrees Pisces. That's the sun and the moon eclipse. And you might like to look up the Sabian symbol for the 24th degree of Pisces or Virgo, Zach.
I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that.
Yep.
It's supposed to be, I haven't seen it, but it's supposed to be a red moon too.
Yes, the blood moon. That's right. Yes.
Yeah. I might go out quickly while Zach's looking that up and see if I can see it.
It's probably too
tomorrow
early.
night. It's tomorrow night.
Too early.
It's
Tomorrow night. Okay. I thought they said the 13th and the 14th, but I'll leave it.
Yeah, I think
13 for the Northern Hemisphere, for the States, and
okay.
yeah, that's right. It's the 14th tomorrow. Yeah.
The Sabian symbol is another doozy, man, I'll tell you.
Okay.
Virgo 24, which is 23 to 4 degrees. Mary and her white lamb.
Ah, yes, I did look that up.
This symbol can show purity of motive and pure and wonderful relationships and friendships. However, it can also point to dependence or codependence, where people can't stand to be separate. Relationships may need to be assessed to see how healthy they actually are. The need for constant reassurance that everything is okay can be wearing and put a strain on those involved. Keeping a sense of innocence and purity will lift you up and out of any problems. Be loving and be there for others, but don't let things get out of hand. So there you go.
Yep. Well, I imagine a lot of people are just trusting the governments and hoping that if they swear allegiance to their governments, that somehow or other they'll navigate us forward and away and out of some of the chaos that's going on. The interesting thing about the eclipse is that it's in a square to 20 Sag. Now the central part of our galaxy is it 27 or 25? I can't remember now.
It's one of those degrees in Sag, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's either 25 or 27 degrees. So it almost is a bit of a message that sort of says, are you centered on a galactic level, or are you, out of balance? And if you look at this chart, it's out of balance, because we have effectively the two stelliums. There's the Pisces stellium that we've got, and within 6 days we will have an Aries stellium, and then in the following month we'll end up with a Taurus stellium. So between now and the full moons through to May, we have this very extreme, intense, potent energy that's quite out of balance on the planet. Yeah.
Can I add something? That
Please.
there are geological / geophysical factors at work which are not generally known or understood, but which are playing a critical role as we progress through time. And that's the fact that, when I say fact, because it is a physical fact, geophysical fact, geological fact, that the major tectonic plates of the Earth are shifting and shaking and moving around and rocking and rolling like they haven't done for the past 3,500 years. and I can't go into the details of that. But one thing about South America, because you mentioned that this was cast for the coast of Colombia, which is northwestern South America, is that the entire continent of South America is shifting to the west.
Ah, yes.
It's moving to the west, and that's why there's so many earthquakes in the recent decade in Peru and other parts of South America. So my interpretation of this horoscope is that we're going to see a lot more geological movement, rock substrata movement in the form of earthquakes hitting South America from tomorrow for the next few weeks and months. That's my prediction.
That's right, yeah. And I mean, we've also had it was north of Iceland and east of Greenland, a 6.3 a day or two ago, like relatively.
Can I say something? When the United States Geological Survey, USGS, gives out a reading on the intensity or magnitude of an earthquake, they're underrating it by a factor of about 2. So the 6.3 earthquake that reported was actually 8 or more.
Oh, really? Yeah, because I looked at it and I thought not all that big, but of course you're quite right. They downgrade it all and you get hardly any attention, but it's not far from the Arctic Circle. So it's significant in terms of polar stabilization.
Yeah.
Whether or not the poles are stabilized, and to have something like this that activates the center of our galaxy with the ascendant that looks very out of balance. And then, as Zachary says, the continents and the tectonic plates are moving. We have far bigger issues to concern ourselves with than just politics. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The other thing that's noticeable with this eclipse chart is the planet Jupiter doesn't seem to have any major aspects unless my computer's failed to draw it. It's got there is a square. I don't know why my computer's not drawing the 6-degree square to Saturn.
That'll be a 9-degree square. It's not
I beg your pardon, sorry.
9.
Rub that out. Rub that
It'll
out.
be a 9-degree square, which for me is out of orb.
No, that's right. Yeah. So there's nothing going on there. So it's either unaspected or very weakly aspected.
You might get a sextile.
There's a sextile
between Venus and
that's
Jupiter.
Right. Yeah.
And
So
maybe
opposition
Mercury, if
to
you
the
want to add
ascendant.
Mercury, probably. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh no.
So
The
those
opposition to the
those two
ascendant.
sextiles, and of course the thing about Jupiter and Gemini is that there's so much propaganda and lies going on that a whole lot of people have just gone, it's all too hard, too difficult, don't know what to believe, just forget about it. And that's one of the downsides of Jupiter in Gemini. And you know, the only way to really get to the facts is to follow the sextiles and do your own research, do some Aries digging, you know, and put everything to the fire and try and find what resonates with your heart. Yes. Yeah. And of course, the other thing in this eclipse chart that's worth noticing is Mars in Cancer, which is a very nationalistic kind of a placement. And what's that square taking us down to? My brain's not working. Oh, it's actually a square to Chiron. Is that right?
Square to Chiron, yeah.
It's a square to Chiron. So it says there's a crisis to do with whether we can think as one humanity, one family of man, or whether we go into our nationalistic huddles. And of course, you see that with the trade issues going on, everyone trying to decide, you know, who should I punish and who's to blame, and is my money safe, you know. So we have a lot of personal issues that are threatening people's security. And when that happens, unfortunately, because of the North Node in Pisces, people will follow a strong leader, you know, because that's always what happens. Whenever there's a threat, the strong leaders come in. And we see that in Australian politics, and no doubt we see it overseas. And it's the most dangerous thing we can do is fall into step behind a strong leader, because we end up in the Pisces stellium just blindly following and going off over a cliff. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to talk about there, Zach?
I just mentioned the Sabian symbol for the sun in Pisces,
Okay.
24 degrees Pisces.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, I got that wrong. 2356. Sorry, it's not the correct one. Pisces 23. Very Piscean Sabian symbol, if I may say.
Yep.
The tiny island seems lost in the broad ocean, but its happy inhabitants have created a world all of their own.
Well, there we go.
This shows living with others, sharing the same space for efforts to create a happy life.
Yep.
The people pictured all live together and have created a world all their own. No matter how well people get along, people still have to compromise and give and take in order to sustain good community relations. Drawn together by similar hopes and ambitions, it is ironic that sometimes compromise is the only way to successful coexistence. Making the most of what is available, even though it is restrictive, will help dispel any feelings of being cut off and isolated. Who are you comfortable sharing your space with? Who would you have sharing your desert island?
And you see that message from the eclipse is connected to Pisces, and we know that that Europe is governed by Pisces. So that's a message for the European countries. You know, who are you? And you know, with the hatred and the xenophobia that goes on against Russia, they forget that actually it's part of Europe. You know, they're neighbours. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, I think I've run out of things to say, and I'm just